Hey, what's going on everyone? Cloud Dropout here. So in this video I'm going to be sharing with you guys exactly how I was able to become an AWS Solutions Architect working for AWS. Now before we get started, we're going to go off on some quick introduction, my journey into AWS, the skills required to become an SA. Basically I'll finish off with some key takeaways I think can be pretty helpful going forward. So to get started, a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Texas at San Antonio back in May of 2019. I graduated with a Bachelor of Business Administration in Cybersecurity, and I had about 5 internships all throughout my schooling. So a lot of those internships constituted, obviously something around like cybersecurity. In particular, my first internship was actually unpaid, and I worked with the city of San Antonio as an IT security analyst type position. And then thankfully that allowed me to get another complimentary internship throughout the semester with Samsung in their R&D center, working for them down in Austin, Texas and the Westlake area. And then after that, I got a job with New Star Energy, which is like a subsidiary of Valero. I was working at their headquarters as a network engineer intern. And I did that throughout the summer of probably 2018, I believe. And then the entire 2 semesters after that, basically my last year of college, I got brought on with Samsung again, basically doing the same type of stuff, just being a security analyst essentially. And then throughout that entire year, also, I had to get a job, and I was trying to plan ahead, taking all my experience from all these internships and then trying to mold that into a full-time job to be able to propel myself into the best career possible. I was interviewing all year long, interviewing all across the country. I got a few offers from different tech companies and one fintech company. And I finally landed my first job out of college with Marathon Petroleum. But one thing that really stuck with me throughout that entire process, it was basically a couple of months before I had actually graduated that I had interviewed with a particular company. And they told me hey, our entire company is on AWS and these are the types of things you should know if you were to come work for us or just in general. They were just telling me learn AWS, it's really high in demand, you're gonna get a great paying job, all that good stuff. Did my research, I found some different courses online. I was reading through Reddit, all these different places, and all roads seem to point towards AWS in particular, or cloud computing. As far as my journey, into AWS, we represented, interviewing with a lot of different companies to kind of get a broad idea of the whole market and where everything stands, particularly for a new grad. And I took that experience and was able to realize, hey, maybe I should get an AWS certification, and that's exactly what I did. So from that point on, after I graduated and started working my full-time job, I basically would just take off, after work, go work out, and then probably 7 to 10 at night, every single night, I'd go to the library back at school and just study all night long, take some of the practice exams and courses that I found online. My whole journey was a realization that, AWS certifications are pretty important. What I did was, took my experience from interviewing at all these different companies. I applied it by actually being able to get a certification within a couple of months. So I spent the whole summer of 2019 studying for my first AWS certification, the Solutions Architect Associate certification. And literally right as I passed that exam and got the certification, I saw this random listing on LinkedIn for an Associate Solutions Architect at AWS, and it was for their Tech U program. So it was basically their early career development program. And so literally what I did was I went on LinkedIn and just applied to it. And then before I knew it, I got an email saying Amazon's knocking, my journey into AWS. And ever since then, obviously I work for them now. I have a fantastic career with them, great company to work for, great people. As far as the interview process, I won't go into specifics, but it's a multi-part process that focuses on, your technical skills, your soft skills, and just your general awareness on, what AWS is in particular. What that looks like is if you were to go on Amazon's homepage and go to their leadership principles, I would definitely recommend going through them and have a concrete anecdote for each one. So for like bias for action, hire and develop the best, those kind of things, or taking ownership of your career or like whatever, I would personally recommend going through each one of those and just think, what have you done in accordance with each of those leadership principles? Basically, how well do you understand like the whole value proposition of AWS? So after all that process, I was able to get my first AWS cert in like August of 2019, I believe. And then right after that, I started the interview process to get into AWS. And then directly after that, next thing I know, I have a full-time job working as a solutions architect at Amazon, which is pretty sweet. And so if you're wondering like, okay, well, how can that help me? So there's a couple things that you should realize in terms of how to become a solutions architect, or really just the overall skills required to become one. And it's really two things. One, you have to have the technical skills. So how well do you understand the basic Amazon Web Services like an EC2 instance, S3, what's a VPC, those kind of things. And it's a representation of your general IT background or like knowledge. And then the other part, which I think is probably even more critical than the technical, is the soft skills and how well you can condense all these like super technical ideas and theories and best practices into really easy to understand concepts for the average person. And in terms of like the value proposition of AWS, that comes into play all the time, because as a solutions architect, you're working with customers, whether it be internal or external. And the more you can understand the value proposition of AWS, the better off you'll be. And so as a recap, some key takeaways that I think are pretty important to get a job at AWS as a solutions architect, and are what I tried to follow for my own path, is number one, get certified. I know a lot of people will say, you don't really need a certification, all you need is experience, and that's definitely true. But at the end of the day, if you don't have any experience, in my mind at least, that's a pretty good way of at least showing to employers that you're willing to learn and that you've actually have sat down on a consistent basis, much like a degree, and have actually gotten the cert pertinent to the job you're applying for and the technology that you'll be working for. And then obviously that ties into the second point, which is get experience. So to get experience, I would recommend first getting certified, and then you do so by taking those practice exams by John Bonzo. And then to get even more experience, take the Adrian Contrill courses, where he literally walks you through step by step on how to basically architect things on the cloud. And it really shows you how to become an engineer overall, an architect overall. And then the two last points I'll leave you with, which are probably my personal favorite, are to always give back. So you always want to be trying to like hire and develop the best, tying it to these leadership principles of Amazon. You always want to be giving back to people. When you're kind of like out of the way and like you're trying to learn things, it was always those people that decided to lend their helping hand and like give you some knowledge to be able to bring you up in the world. And then the last thing, believe in yourself. And if no one else really knows what you're all about, and if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. And so I know like I've had quite a bit of mentors working at Amazon and throughout my entire career and just personal life, but at the end of the day, you can't really proceed forward. Like no one's gonna make you do things except for yourself. So if you're out there and you're wondering like, what do I do? Am I about to graduate college? Is cloud computing the right career for me? Whatever it is, like just listen to yourself. Like there's always that gut feeling that is inside of you, and if you just kind of like are able to harness that and just go for it and just not make any excuses at all, then that'll set you up for success big time. And so anyways, guys, hope this was all kind of helpful, but that was basically my journey into AWS to become a solutions architect. So stay tuned for more.